sportsradiodetroit.com.
Let's go out and leave it all on the field. It's going to start with us. We got to make plays in order for us to win. All you got to do is do your assignment, nothing more. Let's go. Playmakers on 3. 1, 2, 3, playmakers.
Matthew leans in, he's got it, wants to throw. Pressure comes up at the screen, got it to Riddick. Riddick to 15, Riddick 10, Riddick 5, Riddick end zone! Touchdown, Detroit Lions! He's to Abdullah, right side, got a hole. Abdullah 20, Abdullah 10, shakes the man at the 8, and dances into the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions! The action fake, he's gonna throw. Rhodes does, it is picked off by Lions. Coming back the other way off the deflection. Glover Quinn, back to the house. Touchdown, Detroit Lions! 38 seconds left. Bradford's got it on third down. Sets and throws. It is intercepted. Darius Slay's got it at the 30. Slay inside the 25. Matthews got it. Looks right. Throws. Caught. Golden Tate. End zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Barkley takes the snap. Back to pass. Looks. Rolling. Hit. Still alive. Now he's not. Going down. Sack. Back outside the 50-yard line. Kerry Hyler's got it. Backing up, looking for somewhere to go. Stafford's going to tuck it and run. Stafford at the 5, 3, 2, 4, end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Oh, Matthew took it home.
Lions SRD on sportsradiodetroit.com.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Lions SRD here on sportsradiodetroit.com. I'm Ben Salagi. I'm actually flying solo tonight. No Marty Stouffer. He decided to take a break for 1 week. The excitement was way too much for Marty, so he's going to sit this one out. But it is exciting if you're a Lions fan after you watched what happened on Monday night, last game of the week. It was prime time, and the Lions did not look like the Lions at all. It was a team that didn't trail in the fourth quarter, actually had a run game. The defense actually showed up, and the defensive line played very, very well, and Ziggy Ansah showed up. It was very encouraging. It was a game that if you're watching, you could just feel the excitement. Everyone on social media going crazy this way, that way. You know, Matthew Stafford didn't throw any interceptions, made one turnover where you could argue that the ball got hit in a throwing motion. They still ruled it a fumble anyways. But one thing I want to talk about, though, first from yesterday was how good the defense was. Granted, you can look at it, and this was a game that, quite frankly, the Lions should have won. The Giants were already out with Keenan Robinson. He wasn't going to play. And Janoris Jenkins wasn't going to play. So the Giants were already losing their top two defenders. And the Giants also were missing, a couple of linemen. So that right there, missing a couple of pieces from your offensive line, you knew this defense was going to play well. You just didn't know Ziggy Ansah was going to play well. As a unit, this defense generated 8 quarterback hits, 5 sacks, 3 going to Ansah. And it was just something that you could tell. Eli Manning was not comfortable at all night. Odell Beckham Jr. wasn't 100%. He was going to be a decoy from the start. He wasn't going to get a lot of meaningful touches. Got thrown 5 times, caught 4 passes for minimal yards. It was just something that was very, very encouraging to see all the way around. I mean, this Lions team last week created 4 turnovers. Granted, this team could have created 5 turnovers and had 2 touchdowns. Because remember, Killebrew had a pick 6 last week, and then you had the fumble early in the game that was negated, that was recovered by Darius Slay for a touchdown. So that would have been a drastic improvement right there just from the onset, from the beginning. And that's actually, I think, what set the tone. I think right then and there, the Lions knew that they could do whatever they wanted to the Giants' offense. And it was something that I don't think the Giants ever recovered from, even though the play didn't stand. And the Lions immediately, from there, just took over. And this was a team that, again, last week you didn't really run the football all that well. You needed to do that. They did that in spades. So it was something that right there was very encouraging. Amir Abdullah had 86 yards on, I believe, 17 carries. Matthew Stafford did not throw an interception. You didn't really need to ask him to do too much. So there were a lot of positives. Even that back shoulder throw that was completed only because Marvin Jones made an excellent adjustment, for the touchdown. That was on Jones, and Stafford, granted, was putting the ball where it needed to be. One person, too, that stepped up and actually led the Lions in receiving yards was Eric Ebron. Ebron immediately is going to be a player that's going to get better if you're able to run the football. And all you have to do is just look at the first drive. I mean, that first drive was going to tell you, first or second drive, was going to tell you all you needed to know about how this game was going to go. There was a couple of runback or cutback lanes opportunity for Abdullah. He hit one but missed on two. But it opened up play action, and that's where Ebron got his first touch on a nice throw from Stafford. That was basically how Ebron scored his second touchdown. And if it wasn't for Tahir Whitehead biting hard on play action when Evan Ingram came out of the backfield as a fullback for a touchdown, who knows if the Giants get their first touchdown of the year. I mean, that right then and there, says all that needs to be said, essentially. I mean, this was a Giants team whose offense was in dire straits. That's why Beckham played. It was going to allow for their other receivers and Shane Vereen to, get open in certain instances. And a lot of people are going to look at that and be like, well, yeah, that's a no-brainer. But on the defensive side, that's where it was going to get interesting for the Giants. I mean, it really was, because the Giants still have Landon Collins. They still have Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie. They still have Eli Apple. They still have really good guys on the defensive front. Jason Pierre-Paul. You still have him. You still have Olivier Vernon. You have guys, Devin Kennard. You have these guys that still, is more than a respectable defense. Except they didn't look respectable because actually the Lions' offensive line, except for Greg Robinson, looked pretty good. So all in all, it was a very good game. And actually, the Lions are now 2-0. The last time they were 2-0 was 6 years ago in 2011. They got to the playoffs and lost. But what's interesting about that, if you're looking up stats and where things are coming from, in 83 cases where teams start 2-0, 48 of them, and that's about 58%, made it to the postseason. Only 35 didn't get to the postseason. So it's encouraging. I know when we were all looking at the beginning of this season and what the schedule was going to look like, you didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, you were hoping for, 3 or maybe 4 wins, and you are taking advantage of it. And this is the thing that's really nice. The Lions are taking advantage of the opportunity to win games when they can. Again, starting the year 2-0, it's huge. Now you have the Falcons coming into town, and it's something that it's a good measuring stick. Can you go to 3-0? Probably not likely. Probably going to be 2-1, but the Vikings game looks winnable. Panthers now look beatable. The Saints look beatable. So that's the thing. There's more winnable games here. It's going to be tough against the Steelers, tough at Green Bay in November, but then you have the Browns and then the Bears and then the Vikings again. So you can actually do yourself a favor. The Lions are the only team right now in the NFC North, because the NFC North outside of the Lions, everyone lost this past week. So, they got to 1-1, excuse me. So it's just one of the things that is very, very nice. But one thing that you also have to realize, going 2-0 isn't the greatest thing for the Lions. In 1980, the Lions went 2-0. And they won their games by double-digit points like they have this season. They missed the playoffs still. So if you still want to hold on to a whoa, hold your horses type of mentality, there's one right there. The other one that you could hang your hat on is that we still haven't, even though Stafford had a good game, the only turnover that was caused was because he basically got enveloped by the Giants defense, and it was a strip sack. It was unavoidable. But one thing that the Lions didn't do was you didn't see the knockout punch from Matthew Stafford. Granted, you got the knockout punch from Jamal Agnew out of San Diego, who went 88 yards. And I mean, that was incredible because it was the first punt return since 2003 when there was a guy named Eddie Drummond that was doing that on a routine basis that was keeping the Lions in games. But in all seriousness, that's where the knockout punch came from. It came from your special teams. And it's something that if you look at the game, to me, at least, that's kind of concerning. It's very concerning. I mean, yes, the play calling got conservative. Jim Bob Cooter wanted to just keep running the football. And it makes sense because the Giants weren't really doing anything. And you could, hang your head on the run game, which really quickly, Amir Abdullah looked really, really good because he started to hit those cutback lanes. He's starting to get his vision back. He's starting to feel comfortable. So that's encouraging. The right side of the line looked outstanding in run blocking. So, that's encouraging as well. But the thing that's not encouraging is the fact that Stafford didn't deliver the knockout punch. And it's something that where he could have. And I know again, yes, the running game, you had an opportunity to work on it without any real repercussions of the Giants coming back. And I agree with you to a point. But there was a point in that game where Brandon Marshall, another playmaker that the Giants have, if he catches a bomb down, the sidelines, it's still a different game. It's 17-10, late in the third quarter. Agnew doesn't get that other touchdown until the start of the fourth quarter. So that's where at least a couple of concerning things for me come from, is that the Lions went into an immediate prevent offense. They wanted to run the football, and that was it. It wasn't going to be a pedal to the metal, keep stomping on their throat and put them away, which I guess is fine. It's okay because, yes, you still need to work out that run game, and that's what Bob Quinn wants. But at some point, Matthew Stafford has to be that guy that's going to come out and deliver those knockout punches. You need him to deliver those knockout punches. Especially, too, late in the fourth quarter, if it wasn't for Darius Slay coming up big twice, the Giants would have easily tied that game or, came back, back within 7. And if at that point, are you still running the football? Are you not running the football? What's going on? And it's something, too, with the way the Lions played, they played a very complete game. It's something that, again, was very, very encouraging. I mean, there was some real interesting stats from last night's game in regards to that. It was something that, the Lions only, for the first time since I think 2013, ran the ball more than passed the football. So, you have stats like that. And, you look at it, and still, you need the run game to be effective. We talked about that last week. But also, you need to make sure that the passing game is going to be there when you need it, and you're not pulling tricks out of a hat. Granted, 2-0 feels great, but I don't know, with the Falcons coming to town, if you're going to be remaining undefeated. The Lions are only one of 10 teams left in the entire league that's undefeated. I mean, I'm going to let that sink in for a little bit because it's something that is very, very rare. It's like hearing, the Lions were the number 2 team in the NFC at one point last year. It doesn't make sense. But it does, to a point. And again, going back to how everyone played, Graham Glasgow on the offensive line was really, really good. Didn't allow any pressures in 30 snaps when he was asked to pass block. The snap count is something with the running backs that's going to be interesting because Amir Abdullah and Theo Riddick basically split carries. It was 29-26. So, Theo Riddick's not really a running back. He's more of a receiving back. And Amir Abdullah is a guy that is more of a running back than a receiving back, though both guys can, do both things. And that's where the next question comes in. Because Amir Abdullah had 79 yards after contact. And Ziggy Ansah had one of his best games. Matthew Stafford was turnover free, except for that one fumble. How good are the Lions? Because I honestly don't know. And I think that's the thing that, a lot of people are unsure about. I mean, granted, the Lions looked exceptional on Monday night in front of a national audience. I can't recall a time where the opposing fan base and the crowd reaction shots looked so dejected and giving, thumbs down. One guy was actually praying that the Giants would get back and do something. I've never seen a Lions team do that to an opponent. Ever. I can't remember it, and it's not hyperbole or anything like that. I literally cannot remember when that happened. But I don't know if it's because the Lions are that good or their opponents are not that good. I mean, it's something that the Cardinals last year were supposed to be good, but they weren't. The Cardinals, fell flat on their face. And granted, the Lions had an opportunity to get back in the game last week and, beat the Cardinals. And then this week, beating a bad, beat-up Giants team. You can't really use that as a gauge to be like, okay, the Lions are good. The Lions are this team that's just coming out of nowhere. At least not to me. So, yeah, I mean, 2-0 is great. In this franchise, it's amazing. On looking that good on a national stage, it's amazing. But again, we don't know how good this team is. Is the running game going to be great next week or even serviceable? Or is it going to go back to not being all that great? Granted, Vic Beasley is going to be out for a month with a hamstring injury. But you still have Brady Jarrett on the Falcons' offensive line. You still have guys to contend with. Julio Jones is still out there. Devontae Freeman is still out there for the Falcons. Tevin Coleman's still out there. Matt Ryan is still the quarterback. I mean, the Falcons went to the Super Bowl last year for a reason, and they're still a good team. But it's really, really interesting because also you look at, we've been talking about stats here on Lions SRD for a little bit. There's also one stat that's been really, really interesting as well. Is that the Lions are first in red zone efficiency. They're not settling for field goals. They're getting touchdowns. So you look at that. You look at how the running game looked against a very good defensive front. And maybe this team is turning a corner. I mean, if you were listening to the biggest Lions fan in the whole world, John Gruden, you would think that the Lions were already well beyond there. I mean, they were talking about the job, and we've talked about it here, that Bob Quinn's done by upgrading this talent, hitting a lot more than he's missing in the draft. Gerard Davis looked great again last night before he got put in a concussion protocol. The Lions, for the most part, are staying relatively healthy. Haloi Nada's looking okay. Ziggy Ansah, again, getting 3 sacks. Looked good. Anthony Ziddell has found this switch where he's being relied on more. It's something that I don't think we'll truly know how good the Lions are until maybe the end of October when they face the Steelers. And that's in 5 weeks. I mean, you're going to have a good barometer this upcoming Sunday against the Falcons. But then after that, you don't really get tested unless a team like the Panthers turn it around. The Vikings, we don't know if and when Sam Bradford's going to be 100% with his knee issues. So, it's not, anything that they're anything to worry about. The Panthers' offense still's not clicking yet, but they're still dangerous. The Saints, same thing, but the Saints don't really have a defense. You can throw all day on the Saints. The next really good, true, complete team the Lions are going to face after next Sunday is the Steelers. So we're not going to really know how good the Lions are. It'll be even more weird if the Lions start 3-0 because at that point, we can look at it and say maybe the Lions are pretty good. Maybe this is finally the year they win the NFC North for the first time in over 20 years. But that's the thing. I don't think last night's game, Monday night's game, is an indication of how good this team is. Again, it's encouraging. It's awesome. But don't start sipping that Kool-Aid yet. I don't think you can, quite honestly. I think you can actually, if you do sip the Kool-Aid, it might be something like you're joining a cult. It might have bad results. So don't do it just yet. I mean, granted, yeah, there's all these encouraging things. The Lions didn't really have to win the game by running the football. And that's weird. That's insanely weird to say. But that's not to take away anything that happened last Sunday. It's really not. On Monday. It's really not. What this team has done, they've gotten better. Matthew Stafford looking like he's earning every bit of his new contract. If that running game keeps improving, sky's the limit. Because as of right now, this defense looks pretty darn good too. Not great, but good. Better than serviceable. The secondary is going to make it tough. And they're going to get tested next Sunday. They weren't really tested last night, but they're going to get tested on Sunday. So that's why I think, while it's all well and good that the Lions are 2-0, that we have to say, not 2-0, 2-woah. Because I don't think we honestly know how good this team truly is. Granted, again, Stafford looked good, scrambling when he had to, extending plays when he had to. Amir Abdullah looked great. Eric Ebron looked really, really good. And then, of course, Ziggy Ansah maybe returning to form too. And outside of that, like I said, very encouraging for the Lions. It really is. There is encouragement all across the board from Monday night. But the true test is next Sunday at Ford Field. And that place is going to be rocking. It's going to be as loud as it's ever been. Because you have the Lions and you have the Falcons. And it's something that is, quite frankly, a toss-up. Both teams are undefeated. Again, Vic Beasley's out. So it's something where one of the major defensive weapons the Falcons have isn't going to be there. And it's going to be really, really interesting because if you look at the matchup on paper, it's very, very close. Points per game, separated by a point in the Lions' favor. Points allowed per game, the Lions are better by 3.5 points. They've only allowed 16.5. The Falcons, only allowed 20 points a game. Passing yards, relatively similar. Rushing yards, after Monday's game, the Lions have an edge. But it's something that's going to be interesting. The Falcons have allowed almost 300 passing yards, 278. The Lions, 253. Granted, the Lions faced Eli Manning and an old Carson Palmer. But the rushing yards is where it gets really interesting because Shane Vereen wasn't a true running threat yesterday. But the Lions have only allowed 53.5 rushing yards so far this season. So it's, like I said, it's interesting. It's interesting to see where this team's coming from. Because the Falcons, they relax if they have a lead. They did it in the Super Bowl. They did it last week against Green Bay. And this was a team that in week 1 needed to play defense in the final seconds of that game to beat the Bears. And they beat the Bears 23-17. So we don't know how good the Falcons are either. They look great. Super Bowl finalists. They have everything going in their corner. MVP quarterback in Matt Ryan. But next Sunday is the measuring test. If you want to get excited, even if the Lions lose close, that's the measuring stick. So yeah, live it up. Ford Field's going to be rocking on Sunday, as it should be. But it's going to be really, really interesting to see how the Lions and Falcons game plays out. Because if it's anything like the past 2 weeks, the Lions could improve to 3-0. And that's really uncharted waters for the Lions. But until then, obviously enjoy the win. Enjoy what the Lions have done so far. But just be careful when you sip that Kool-Aid and you hope it's not tainted with anything from an occult or anything like that. You don't want to get bit by bad Kool-Aid. But until next week, Marty will be back. I won't be riding solo, but I do appreciate you spending part of your day with me. Obviously, if you are listening on the network, you want to go do a different podcast, you definitely can. You have your options. You have the SRD Roadshow, which is live every Saturday from 9 to 11, followed by Saturday Tailgate with Jeremy Stover. That, if you want to catch that live, that's on crbradio.com. If you want to catch that on demand, it will be here on sportsradiodetroit.com, out of bounds twice a week. They're always putting up good content, one of our better shows, obviously. Spinning the Wheel should be coming back. The Red Wings preseason is fully underway, even though they're losing to the Boston Bruins currently 2-0. And, of course, written content will be coming up on the site as well. But you also have the laugh tracks if you're not into sports, you just want entertainment. Over Under Fair. You have Fanarchy as well, which is live on Saturdays, I believe, from 4 to 6. And, of course, on demand here on sportsradiodetroit.com. We have you covered. So until next Sunday, have a great rest of the week. And we say good night.